Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is our second offering, our second session of Latte and Learn. The first one, of course, was on smart homes. How many of you guys came to the first one, Latte and Learn on smart homes? You came back for the coffee, right? Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So this is a very casual event, very casual conversation that we will be having through the morning. As you need to get up, get more coffee. I still call them potties. I can't help it. I'm sorry. If you need to go to the potty. I keep telling people my oldest son just turned 16, and I still call it the potty. I can't help it. But you can come and go as you need to. We get that you are all working realtors, so if you get a phone call, all I would ask is if everybody could grab their phones real quick and just silence them, turn that ringer to low. Then that'll help everybody's comfort when you do get that urgent phone call and have to rush from the room. It's also way easier to fake it. If I gotta go. So I want to welcome my friend Susie. She is with 360 Property Designs, right? 360 Tour Designs, and she's really going to lead the conversation today. I'm going to be as quiet as I possibly can, that I ever am, and let her kind of lead the conversation. But I do want to just have her introduce herself to you all, because I know not everyone knows her. So I'll let her introduce herself and kind of how she got into the virtual tour space. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking around and I think I only recognize one face because we sat together at the last one, right? I'm Susie Chamberlain-Doris. I'm a co-owner of 360 Tour Designs of Central Indiana. We do real estate marketing and imagery. Basically, my husband and I had always kind of been interested in photography, or he really was the photography guru. I was always interested in real estate. And a couple years ago, we decided to kind of take the plunge, and we purchased the Central Indiana territory for 360 Tour Designs. So we kind of do it all with real estate imagery, stills, aerials, Matterport, that sort of thing. I really took a interest in kind of the more cutting edge type of marketing, which Matterport is, especially when we took over, was definitely kind of one of the newer tools. And as I was just telling Angie, every couple weeks go by, there's even more cool stuff coming with it. So it's always something to keep up with. Try to stay on top of it as much as possible. And there's so many cool things, and I've found out through my, couple of years that a lot of realtors don't know a lot of the tools that are out there as much as we think think y'all do. So here I am.
And we actually had Susie as one of our speakers for Tech Talk a couple of years ago, and it was such a fascinating session. I thought we need more time with her. We've got to expand on this because she just barely scraped the surface during that session. So this is a bit of a follow-up to that, but I just wanted to get this information out. We're seeing more and more utilization of not only aerial photography, but the 3D home tours incorporated into listings, especially the higher price listings in our system. And I'll talk about that kind of at the end, how those get incorporated. But there are, as technology evolves, we get questions from our members about how to use virtual reality, how to service those out-of-town clients that you may have. And so the conversation has been increasing over the past several years, and it really was just a ripe time to start putting this in front of you. We won't have all the answers. We'll probably have more questions than answers perhaps, but at least get the conversation going and see what the future holds, what is coming as far as utilization of this technology to help with that immersive buyer experience. So you want to jump in here? So when we talk about 3D virtual tours, the primary source of that right now in our marketplace comes from Matterport. Those are the majority of the tours that we see. So I'll let Susie explain that a bit.
And we don't mean to just brand it as Matterport. That's just right now. Really, that's what's out there. That's ease of accessibility and use. Matterport really is out there. Exactly what do we say when we or what do we mean when we say Matterport? Raise your hand if you have ever used Matterport for a listing. Raise your hand if you have no idea what we're talking about. Okay, awesome. So basically what it is, well, that's another thing, is we're learning, so there's so much out there that, you know, you guys have the opportunity to utilize, so learning about it is really key. Matterport is a 3D virtual tour. What happens is you have someone go in, and Matterport has a special camera. You go in, you do scans, and then it processes. Basically what it does is it stitches together 360-degree views. It stitches them together to build an entire 3D model of the home. So you can literally walk through the home, you can turn around, we're gonna have an example here. You can walk through it, you can turn around in it, you have a dollhouse view that we'll talk about as well. And what it is web hosted. So it is a link. What would happen is after processing and editing, you would have a link, and that link takes you directly to the Matterport, and there is a place on the VLC to put that link in there, and it takes you directly there. So once again, it is web hosted. And let's go to our example.
Yeah, so here's an example of one. This is
I'm going to take the mouse here.
absolutely.
All right, so this is actually one that was done by Matterport. So it kind of has all the bells and whistles that you would need. So we're walking in, so you can look at the ceiling. This mouse is a little funky.
I know.
All right.
My kids think that this looks like a video game. Like you can advance through
Yeah.
like a video game.
You can walk through, let's turn around. And then you have these really cool things. Actually, let's go back to the front because I want to show you how cool this one is. These really cool things called matter tags that can take you to other content, such as video. This one right here is it takes you to a video from, anybody watch $1 Million Listing?
Mm-hmm.
Guilty Pleasure?
Mm-hmm.
That's the Altman Brothers, which if you watch that, you know. They actually do a lot of work with Matterport, kind of, you know, giving some ideas of how great it is and how it works. But you can link to video. So imagine, for something like this, imagine when somebody walks in the front door and they click on that, it's a video of you introducing the property. That's one of the things you can do with video on there. Also, we can have these cool matter tags, like that's gonna, I think that one plays piano music, we won't do that. This one, just kind of explaining the breakfast, or, you know, saying that's a breakfast nook. You have ones that can go to, where's the granite countertop? Granite countertop. If we click to learn more, do you mind if I click the link there? It's gonna go to house, and it's gonna go to exactly what kind of countertop that is. So basically, anything you would want to showcase in the home, you can use these matter tags for. And additionally, if we were to, let's start at the beginning here. We're going to hit play. It's going to kind of give us a walkthrough. So there's multiple things that you can do with it, and this is a slideshow walkthrough. The next example I'll show you is one that we put together, and it is a walkthrough, I guess you would say. So this is basically what it is. It can be completely user-driven. It can be driven by the play button. So basically what you can do is you can set it up to where as soon as they click on the link, it automatically plays and it takes them through the house, and it can take them exactly where you want to go. It's one of the things that we usually do with our listings that we do these on, and you can set them to, yeah, you want to go to another one here? You can set them to, you know, your 45-second mark and just take them to the parts of the house you want. And if they want to continue, they can, but it's that eye catcher right there. It takes them to the coolest parts. So this one was actually, if anybody went to Homerama, this is one of the homes from Homerama. And we were able to scan, luckily we were able to scan the outside that day as well, because you can't scan in direct sunlight, but you can do outside. Oh. You might. No, okay. So if we hit the play button here, it's going to take us to the dollhouse view, so that's basically the entire home. And it will literally walk us through. So that's something that, however you decide to do this, if you want it to be a completely user-driven experience and they click on the link and they go through, which we have realtors that like that, or we have, you know, the walkthrough here. So that's kind of, that wasn't me.
That wasn't.
So that's kind of the basis of what Matterport is.
Did you call it matter tags?
Matter tags.
TAG?
TAG, the matter tags, yes. Any other questions at the
If
moment?
you have questions, this is your box.
It's like dodgeball, you just throw it at somebody. Maybe not quite as aggressively.
Okay.
So instead of, and also these can be incorporated into your standard virtual tour links as well. If you have where you like to get virtual tours, say,
Like the slideshow view.
for example, let's say Tour Factory or one of those. A lot of them now, I can't speak for some of them because I don't work with all of them, but a lot of them now have where you can put the Matterport link in those as well, and it becomes basically a single property website that houses all of your media. That goes into the BLC, right where your virtual tour link would be, and it would obviously take you to a site, and that's where you have your photos, your walkthrough, your video, whatever you would do. So it's shareable like that.
Yeah.
As well as you can, it's natively shared on Facebook. So what that means, or on social media, Twitter, what that means is once you put that link, say all you have to do is open a post, put the Matterport link in, it is going to basically generate a thumbnail for you, and it says explore the property in 3D, and it is a native content where it actually stays within the Facebook platform or the Twitter platform, which somebody a lot smarter than me could explain why the algorithms like native content more than they like to take you out of links.
Yeah, they do. I'm not smarter on that point, but what she's talking about is it's natively hosted in Facebook. Is sometimes when you click on a link to something, it pops open in another window or another tab within your browser. Not so here. It actually plays the tour within the Facebook framework, so they're not driven to another site, which can sometimes be irritating to people, to users. All right, so we are starting to see a lot of these tours getting incorporated, like I said, into listing applications, but Susie was nice enough to allow me to go and follow, actually, not you, but your husband, who is your business partner, around as he did some scans to put a tour together. So I got to tag along behind him and ask him all kinds of questions, which was like super awesome. I probably aggravated him. Like, how do you do this? How do you do this? Can I play with it? And no, go. No, he was very, very gracious and kind to let me follow behind. But we were talking about some other applications of how this technology can and is being used. And they've got some really interesting ideas as well. So we just wanted to kind of take a little detour over into that side of the business as well. So aside from real estate marketing, how else are you either using it or seeing it used in the marketplace?
One of the ways that we're using it quite a bit is with builders. We do what we call a pre-installation scan. So basically, right when everything is within, and we can, if you just want to put that one up, that one doesn't have a play button these now, so just basically, right before drywall goes up, they call us, we go in there, we do a scan, and then the builder and homeowner have a living, breathing 3D model of exactly where everything is within the home. All electrical, all plumbing, anything behind the walls. So where this really helps them out is, I have a few examples of what the contractors have told us, but one is a plumber switched some lines. And the drywall's already up, they know something's wrong. It is in a $1 million home. They're, instead of taking out an entire wall to figure out where it is, they can take out a pinprick hole in the drywall because they know exactly where the problem is because they can look at this. You can zoom into these as far as sometimes to see even barcodes on certain pieces of equipment. Homeowners, from what we're told, the builders say the homeowners love it because they feel like, one, it's a peace of mind. They always know exactly, well, they can see what kind of workmanship is put in, where things are. So they love it as kind of, an exciting thing for them, and kind of like that memento of the home that you built. And then the contractors love it because it saves them time, money. But we have one builder who builds custom-built homes, and he used to go in and take, iPhone video or iPhone pictures before the drywall would go up. And he said, inevitably, he would spend 2 hours in there taking pictures or video, and where they needed to look was the one place that he didn't get. You know, he said inevitably that was the case. So for him, it's a very cost-effective tool that they've, you know, a lot of the builders we work with have actually built us into their timetables. So that's kind of a really cool, newer thing. Some builders are into it.
Yeah.
Some builders, you know, we take a little more.
And this was the idea I told Susie when she sat down. I was like, you know, Jeff, your husband, told me not to tell anybody about this because this is something unique that you guys have kind of built into that process. So this is your secret. Don't tell anybody that they're doing this, unless
Except
it's a builder.
except the builders that you work with, and we'd love to have you tell them about it.
What's something like that cost? How they do it?
You know, different companies have different costs. So generally, usually, I'll tell you what, because I don't want to just, you know, market myself up here. I'll tell you what, you know, Matterport generally kind of uses 10 cents a square foot, kind of as a rule. We are a little bit more lower cost than that, and I think most of the companies in Indianapolis that do it are a little lower cost than that. So, you know, depending on the size of the home, I mean, if you're looking at, you know, 5,000-6,000 foot custom built homes, you know, $400 or $500 or so. Obviously, the smaller they get, the cheaper it is. But it's a lot more cost effective than people would think it is.
Right.
You know, on these standard 2,000 square foot homes, they go for about $200 a piece. And then obviously it goes up from there.
I don't understand how they can pinpoint a problem after them pictures are taken. Is it like GPS within the whole house?
Well, what it is, since they have a 3D model of the house, if they know, okay, so another one. So they had someone drywall over pocket doors, and the drywaller was having an argument about, you know, that the pocket doors weren't there, or the slip for the pocket door wasn't there, that sort of thing. And they go back and they show, you know, within the walls exactly where. So he didn't do what he was, you know, he didn't follow directions, and therefore the cost is on him to come take the drywall down, replace it. Like we said about the plumbing, where they can, if they know lines are crossed somewhere, they can look at this and they can figure out,
Identify where the problem is.
is.
Another example Jeff gave me when we were there is, he said, you know, if the drywaller comes in and puts up a sheet of drywall and hey, we thought there was supposed to be an outlet there, you can go back into the pre-installation scan and say, oh yeah, there's an outlet box, you know, 6 studs over and, you know, up standard height. They can just cut out that piece without having to pull that whole sheet or half a sheet of drywall out to be able to resolve the problem. Saves time, saves money.
And these are accurate within measurements are accurate within 1% as well. So there is also a feature where you can add measurements. So you can go let's go to the floor plan.
So here's the floor plan.
So Matterport also can, once you do a scan of a property, it will basically, if you want it, we can develop a floor plan out of that. Accurate within 1%. We were discussing earlier, the larger the house gets, kind of that, obviously 1% can mean a lot in things, but it is accurate within 1%. The floor plans that's one thing that we were going to talk about. I have not seen the market for it as huge here in the Indianapolis area, but in a lot of our other the 360 Tour Designs locations across the country, floor plans are almost a must on every listing. So as you know how trends come and go, so it might not be a trend here now, but it may be coming, you know, or not. Super inexpensive, because if you're just looking for a floor plan and not an actual walkthrough where, say, a 2,000 square foot home is going to take about 80 scans, which is, I was going to bring my camera today too, but Jeff has this. I couldn't.
He's using it, he's working.
He's working, which is about 80 scans, so basically 80 points of where we put the camera. To do a floor plan, you would probably need 40, because you're not actually having someone go through and look. All we're trying to get is the measurements. So it's just super inexpensive, because you can go in and out of a house and be done and get that floor plan generated within 48 hours for, you know, a lot less than having somebody go in there and hand measure.
Well, and we are primarily in a residential, you know, marketplace. Most of you in the room probably handle more residential properties, but on the commercial application, we'll get into that a little bit more, but these floor plans could be indispensable at the commercial application.
Well, I do, so with measurements, because sometimes you find
Yeah, I'm sorry, the box.
inaccuracies, can you utilize this to really get?
Say it again.
So, sometimes you find inaccuracies in what the or what the assessor says the square footage is versus what somebody else says it is. Can you use this to get a more accurate square footage on different properties?
As I said, they are very upfront that it can be within 1%, but it is within 1%. And that's, I mean, and I'm not sure, you know.
So the way that you would handle that as a listing in the BLC is when you put a listing in and you enter the square footage, you also have to identify the source. So most everyone uses the assessor as that source. It just limits the risk and liability on you. But if you have discrepancies and you say this is not the most accurate source, we let you pick from a whole array of other sources: broker, builder, floor plans, appraisal. So there are lots of other options in there. If you have floor plans that you feel are more accurate than what the assessor has reported, then yes, you can use this as a source. Just you would want to take into account that, you know, that potential discrepancy there of the 1%.
And they do measure from walls in. Okay, so that is one, they measure from walls in. Any other questions?
When you said, I missed that, the inside of the wall to the inside of the wall and inside of the room?
Yeah, basically they measure from wall in some, and once again, you are
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
BLC expert. In some areas, you know, some BLCs and MLSs, you know, measure exterior dimensions,
Okay.
and this one is interior dimensions. So that's another thing to know.
So that's one application that can be used. This is sort of the other conversation that's happening, is as virtual reality sort of takes everyone's imagination away. How is it used here? We've just got a little video that explains this, I think, pretty well. This is Matterport's incorporation of virtual reality, so obviously it's branded for them. You'll just have to give us a little grace on that. But I'm going to close this. We're done with it for now, right? Yeah. Can I look at the sample?
For decades, professionals across industries have tried to convey what a real-world location is like. But these attempts always fell flat. The only way to really understand the feel and layout of a place was to visit it in person. Until now. Introducing Matterport Core VR, the only way to transform real places into totally immersive experiences that give you a true sense of being there. With Matterport Core VR, businesses can transport their clients anywhere, all from their iPhone or Android device. Home buyers can explore 15 homes in 15 minutes, then visit their top choices in person. Executives can make smarter, faster decisions remotely when leasing a new office space without ever having to leave their home base. Travelers and event planners can explore and fully understand the layout of a place before they book. With Matterport Core VR, it's easier than ever to differentiate yourself from the competition and win more business. Matterport, be there.
Oh, yeah, I'm in this now. All right, so just some additional, potential applications there. Personal story, because I just can't help myself. So my oldest sister recently moved from central Indiana to Florida. I don't understand why. She moved in the middle of winter. It just didn't make any sense to me. But I was talking with her about some of this technology. She's like, oh, that would have been great to have on a lot of these, condos that they were touring, because they would have to look online, try to flip through the pictures, figure out, their top 3 or 4 they wanted to go see, book appointments, and then fly down And, you know, when you're making your final decision, you're probably going to do that anyway. But they had several, you know, flights back and forth trying to tour properties, and she said, yeah, if there was something like this, that would have made my home buying process a whole lot easier. Now, we don't necessarily have a second home market or, you know, vacation rentals in Indianapolis so much, but there are lots of applications that I think this could be really useful in.
One of the things, or one of kind of the trepidations about this is it, you know, it can make the realtor feel like, well, they're not there to sell the property, right? So you're not there to walk them through and kind of talk to them, oh, you know, you could do this, you could do this. But one of the things that research has really found is that what it does is really create a sense of ownership for the buyer before they even walk into the home. So once, my statistics are eluding me, but when a buyer looks at a 3D virtual tour, generally they look at it, I believe it was at least 10 times. So by the time they're in that home, if it's something they really liked, they feel like, oh, that's, you know, they know it, right? They already feel it.
It's become familiar.
And so that's something that makes your job quite a bit easier when a buyer already has that sense of ownership, as well as, I think we talked about at Tech Talk, imagine yourself being able to do virtual open houses, and being able to have a virtual open house where, say, you are on
Like a conference
a
call.
conference call or a go-to meeting, something like that, and you have, you know, you are there available and you are having a virtual open house. People can call in, they can ask you about it, you can walk them through it because you can share screens, that sort of thing. And, you know, you could do 5 of those on a Sunday, whereas, you know, instead of 1, something like that. So where there are drawbacks where you feel like you're not actually with them, going through it with them, one, there are ways to counteract that by doing things like virtual open houses, you know, being on the phone with them, that sort of thing. So there's kind of, you know, a lot of ways to calm your fears about that drawback.
Well, and I think something that we have heard as far as, you know, virtual reality is, gosh, the virtual reality, I call them masks, but the goggles, it looks like a scuba diving mask to me. Is that they're expensive, they're, you know, of course, as technology advances, price goes down. I don't know if you saw the cardboard version that you just slide your phone in. Those you can get through Amazon, that's my favorite store. But you can get those really anywhere, so it makes that experience a lot more accessible, which is kind of neat.
And Apple just announced their new, they are working on a new lower cost option as well that is supposedly going to really compete with the Google Cardboard glasses. So that's something on the horizon that they've just announced. Any questions or comments?
Yes, so it's not clear to me, assuming we've done it here and the potential buyer is in California, how do we convey this to the potential buyer?
If it's, once again, it's just a link. So if they have VR glasses or VR goggles, they can do it virtual reality style where they're walking through it. If they don't, they can be doing exactly what we're looking at right now. So, you know, you would just send them the link, and they would be, like I said, you could be on the phone with them or, you know, send them a link to multiple properties and they could go through those that way. So just remotely.
And you know, if you're a relocation rep, you know, some of you do relocation and you have connections with people in other states, in California or New York, then maybe that becomes part of your package. Is, you know, you're going to see some of these tours available. Here's you know, the VR, you know, cardboard version. You could provide that as part of your packet and say, when you see these, you can slide your phone into you know, into this box and view those in a virtual reality environment. You're not going to see them on all homes, but where available, it works really nicely. Did you have a question?
I did actually, because in our market, houses are selling so fast, and which is great as a listing agent, a little more cumbersome as a buyer agent. I see value in this in slower markets, but I also see opportunity in fast markets if there's a way to, and maybe it can be incorporated later, to move walls and see what it would look like with the existing infrastructure. Because a lot of what we're doing now is we've got buyers that are willing to kind of budge on what they don't want, but to make it what they want.
So there's also, and once again, I'm going to speak from the Matterport example. I'm not sure if there are other companies doing this, but there's, they call it a Matter Pack. And what it is basically, it also can provide you with OBJ files, so you can do as-built, you can do 3D models. We were just talking earlier. She did this for one of her last listings. She used the OBJ file to basically do where, the kitchen was outdated, and she could basically go, whoop, and here's what the kitchen could look like. So yes, that is a possibility. Another thing that we go ahead.
All right. And my client was from Chicago as well. So I listed a home on Thursday, and so he came down, and after seeing the Matterport, the videos, the virtual tour, he came down and bought a house on Saturday.
Wow.
So it works.
And he had already found familiarity and sort of ownership of that property because he probably looked at it not once, but multiple times.
Multiple times, and showed his, spouse and his kids and his mom and,
His neighbor.
Another thing is that we kind of talk about is, yes, it's a fast market, but you're also marketing yourself as a realtor. And to be able to show your potential clients that you have the most up-to-date marketing tools and marketing materials, it may not have been the reason why you sold the last house, but it may be the reason why you get the next client.
Can you add something like the Matter Pack onto an existing, if you already have an existing Matterport tour created? Is that something you can add on?
Yep, as long as it's still being actively hosted, then yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Where does this get stored? Do you store it in the cloud, or is it stored on a server so that the client, so like it can be seen by anybody that's maybe interested in that house?
Absolutely, it is. It's hosted through Matterport. Once again, we're going to go with Matterport. It's hosted through Matterport. So when you have a camera, basically you purchase a hosting subscription, processing and hosting subscription through Matterport, and that is where they're housed, so to speak. And so that link is always available as long as you basically don't make it inactive. So that's what kind of a side note. Once the listing has sold, if you're not using your own camera, that's one thing that we run into. Let the person who did the Matterport know that it's sold, because that's the only way we know to make the listing inactive, and you may not want the next homeowner to stumble across that sort of thing. So it is active as long as you keep it there.
Do we have any limitations on exterior shots? Because I know with the home that's like kind of outside, but for somebody that's out of town to get like kind of a visual of the street, I know like Google Maps, there are certain homes that are like blocked out and things like that for privacy. So is there any limitations that we have with that?
Not here. Would you mind? That's the one I wanted to get to. Would you mind going to the dollhouse view? Because I believe I set the 360 up on this one. I may not have. I did. Okay. So now there are limitations should you want to. Okay. So Matterport is also linked to Google Street View. However, you cannot put residential properties on the Google Street View. So anything commercial that you do with Matterport, that the owner or seller or whatever would be interested in, you can basically have it on Google Street View. So when someone Googles that address, it goes directly into the building. So Matterport they do have that relationship with you, but residential you cannot. The only other things that you would have be the same thing as you would have if you were just doing still photos. So if someone, didn't want this shown or that shown or whatever. Other than that, normally what you do on the outside, this is a dollhouse view of, actually this is the same house that you guys just saw pre-installation scanned. So this is before and after. So you just saw the house under construction, and this is the house after it was built. So this is the dollhouse.
This is the one I got to go, right?
Yep.
It's super pretty. I did not realize that people actually lived there because I walked in and I was like, oh, it's staged so beautifully and everything's so neat and tidy. It looks nothing like my house. No, there are actually people living there. So yeah, this was a really cool experience. So as you're looking at this, just kind of talk through your process because you start at the outside, right?
So what we do is we generally start at the outside of a property. We will take what you call a 360 view. So it's not an actual scan where you can, I can't move around in this, I can't, but I can turn all the way around like this. Now this is not a listing, which is why we are able to have all these. If you're doing this on a listing, we obviously have to, get signs out of the yard and things like that. So the 360 view is tied within the scan, so I can click on this and I can go right back into the property. And basically it's whatever you want to be shown, so we can do 360 scans of the backyard, side yards, anything. Kind of a newer thing that's going on. I almost always try now to scan patios and things like that. The Matterport itself under direct sunlight is not happy. So if it's noon during the summer and there's sun, it is virtually impossible to get scans to work if you're in a backyard or a patio. If it is early morning, late afternoon, a lot of times you can get it, like the house that we just showed, those were actual scans, the Homerama home. So those show up on the dollhouse. You could walk around those. But in sunlight, you can't do it. There is a camera you can do it with. It's called the Latte Black, and you can do it with that. However, that camera, a Matterport costs, when all is said and done, under $5,000 for everything. The Lattes, you're looking at $15,000 for everything, and sometimes more. So that does that, and that's kind of a new thing. Matterport actually hosts that technology as well, to where you can do, I know I'm skipping ahead.
And we'll see a little bit
Yeah,
of an
we'll see a bit of this
example.
later. But yeah, there's plenty of options for outside. It just kind of depends on what you're looking for and what the camera is capable of doing in that space.
But I think one of the things that she was alluding to is it a problem to have the neighbor's house view?
Right.
Especially when they're like blurred out.
Sure. Have you found any problems
No,
with that?
we've never found any problems with that, and that's not something even Matterport really has discussed or come across. I feel like especially when we're doing downtown properties with stills, a lot of times you're getting the whole street. For instance, we do a lot in West Clay, and you're getting the community shots for stills. So I think, it hasn't, I haven't seen it as a problem yet, not saying that it might not be at some point, but once again, these are things you can turn off and on. So you can also start at a really cool spot within the home. You don't have to have the dollhouse, you don't have to have the outside view. Some homeowners prefer the dollhouse to not be shown. They have that kind of fear that if someone can see exactly, where the layout of my house, exactly. We do try and calm those, or the agents that we work with try and calm those fears. Is basically with 48 stills, you can pretty much figure it out as well. It's just like that kind of fear.
But one of the things you've also told me is you can restrict certain scans
Absolutely.
from a tour as well. So talk about that a bit.
Closets, for instance, let's go back to our example here. I didn't do it on this one, but I can show you where we might. So say someone does not want their basement to be shown at all, but they wanted the dollhouse. So the dollhouse, they really like this because this is like super cool. Let me back out of here. I'm going forward, not back. This mouse. So they're like, okay, the dollhouse is really, 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 really cool, and I want it to look normal, and I want it to look right, but okay. But I don't want my basement to be shown. I have 5 safes down there. It's a mess. All of that. What we can do is we can scan everything, so the dollhouse makes sense, or if they're looking for floor plans or something, but we can disable the entire basement. So if somebody's trying to go through the house, it's like it's like
a force field,
right? They can't get down to the basement no matter how hard they try.
Yeah.
So we do that with master closets. We do that with we turn the dollhouse off. So you can really do whatever your homeowner is looking for. If you just want the kitchen, if they just have a fabulous great room and the rest of the house looks like, you can just do the great room and the entrance. You don't have to scan the entire home. There's really limitless possibilities when it comes to that.
Throw the mic over that way.
I was just wondering, can you take things out, like if there's personal things or pictures or something they don't want people to know that you have?
That is one thing with Matterport. I'm sure some folks, some folks out there in this universe that are incredibly more into detail, they have certain ways of doing it, but basically they'll take it off Matterport hosting and then they create another set, and so it kind of becomes another animal, but
Sure.
pretty much the answer is no.
So are you
Yeah.
talking like blurring out family photos, that kind of thing?
You can blur out family photos.
So there you go.
You can blur faces. They just came out with this, it just came out of beta. There is an option where when you start processing, you put blur faces. Now, it's not always 100%, but if it recognizes a face on a photo, it will blur it. But once again, it's up to the AI, the artificial intelligence. But there is really no way to Photoshop a Matterport, no way to take things out. So that's something before your, whatever company you hire, or if you have a camera yourself, before you go in there, you want to make sure that everything you're not comfortable with is gone. Oh, go ahead.
Well, okay, so you mentioned you can't Photoshop and do things like that. So talk about adjusting for lighting if you have some wonky lighting.
Pretty much what we can do is mount a light on top of the camera. But once again,
Once the scan is
once the
taken.
scan is done, it's done. So there's not really much that you can do with changing lighting or upping your ISO or anything like that. It's just, it kind of is what it is, which is why, there's a tendency you don't want to do Matterports when it's dark outside. You don't want to do, but we do those pre-installation scans. There are no lights, obviously, there's no electricity in the homes. We do them, we do basements that way, and they're still, actually, you know what, can we go back to Alfred? The camera is good enough that it's still fairly light. Sometimes you will get a yellowy-ish tone if they have all of those super soft yellow bulbs. That's one thing that's kind of on our recommendations list of what to do before getting your house photographed or 3D scanned. No one does it, but is to replace soft lighting with cool lighting, because you get a lot better image off of that.
Well, and Susie won't say this because she truly is here as an educator and not as a salesperson today. So I'm gonna, first of all, thank you for that. But that is one, I think one aspect of why when you're looking at doing something like incorporating these Matterport tours, it's worth it to have a professional come in because they are conscious of making sure blinds are open, you have as much natural light as possible, and looking at that from an artist's eye. Where I do know there are a handful of realtors in our membership who have purchased the Matterport kits for themselves and do them, and I think for the most part they're fine. But sometimes it's nice to have that expertise in place.
And we know what lights to leave on and sometimes what lights to turn off, what is going to kind of yellow and muddy things up, that sort of thing.
What about sun coming in and wind, don't that create a glare?
Well, usually it looks beautiful in Matterports because you get
So
that
what?
nice sunshine coming through. We usually leave the blinds instead of all the way open. We usually leave them, if there are blinds, we usually leave them slatted. So it just kind of brings the sunlight in. I wish I could show you one of mine.
Is a
See what I'm
cloudy
saying?
day a good day to do it on the inside also?
Either way, just as long as it's not dark outside. Like if it's thundering and lightning, I did one yesterday, right? The weather was disgusting. I did one yesterday, it turned out beautifully. I looked at it this morning, it was a gorgeous home out in Greenfield. It turned out fine. So really the only lighting you don't want to do in is, 5 a.m. or, 10 p.m. Mhm.
Well, and one of the parts of the process too that I learned is when they do a scan, then they'll mark any mirrors, windows. They mark those. Once the camera scans it, they get the picture back. You can correct my
No, you're good.
terminology,
Yeah.
but they get the picture back and kind of look and say, okay, there's a window here that then as the scans are processed, they take that into account. The bathrooms, there's a bathroom in here.
He couldn't get the camera out of this one too. I think this is one. Usually we try and
Here's
make
the
this.
camera!
Usually we try and make this not happen as much as possible, right?
But it's better than a person with one of the, remember the LeClick?
So what happened here was he was trying to make it not, because he was trying to get in the shower, and I can see he was trying to get over here, but the camera was probably saying, I don't know where I'm going, so he had to place one right here. Now, once again, if this were a listing scan, we could always disable that, so it would make you jump to the ones where you couldn't see the camera.
Jump from the toilet to
Jump
the
from the
shower.
toilet to the shower.
It's an internet, no, it's an
Okay.
internet connection thing.
So, but once again, and sometimes like in home gyms, it gets a little tricky, but we try to.
Are those circles where the, because I've seen that and looking at others, is that where the camera was placed?
That's exactly where the camera was placed,
Okay.
yeah. Back in the back of the box.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, do we have a different place on the VLC to put the link to this? Or is
I
it
will
still
tell
for-
you in just a few minutes.
Okay.
I'm leaving this over here. You're in charge of tossing it around.
But yeah, that's what the camera looks like, everybody. But generally, like I said, we'll try and not get the camera in there. I am in a lot of showers. I'm on top of a lot of toilets. So trying to.
She's also a trapeze artist.
I am. Any other questions, Dr. Monica?
Actually, I have a quick one on like the statistics of views. A lot of times our clients want to see like what pictures are they looking at the most. I don't know, how does it track it when it's more virtual like this?
It will track how many, man, I should have had you log into that, I didn't think about that. It will track exactly how many views you've had, it will track how many, basically how many times the same IP has looked at it, how many times different, so it'll have, it has like 3 different statistics that you can use, and you can show them 327 people looked at this, 220 of them looked at it more than one time, so it does have those statistics that you can offer.
I guess, I mean, is it possible to see where they're spending most of their time?
Not at the moment, no.
Like where they're looking?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
know.
not like the pictures where you can say, oh, they clicked on this picture
Right.
22 times. Yeah.
Are they twirling in the kitchen?
Or they're just hanging out in the kitchen. Yeah. You can also, for instance, if you had a homeowner that didn't want somebody to be able to turn things around and look up and down at all, you can set it. There's an option where you can set it. Do you remember the walkthrough where I hit play and it was automatically taking it? You can set it to where that's all they can do. To where they can't click and turn around and all of that. So you can, once again, pretty much whatever setting you're looking for, we can kind of make happen.
How is the dollhouse view created from assessing an existing house that's been there a while? Is it created from taking the views around and then it takes off the ceiling?
Yep.
And then shows you a view down?
Super cool, yes. Even in the homes, like I said, the pre-installation scans homes that don't have walls, it figures out how to do a dollhouse. And you can look down on it. So yeah, they basically stitch it all together and it creates that. So what Angie was just talking about, the trimming of windows, mirrors, things like that is actually very important, because if you don't do that properly, your dollhouse is gonna have like light things going here and there, and it's not gonna be crisp and clean. It's gonna kind of look like a jumbled mess on the outside. So like when I say trimming, I mean what it is we have an iPad, and the iPad is actually controlling the camera. You hit a scan, the camera will turn around, it's 360, and then the point will show up on an iPad, and it basically builds the house on the iPad as you are going through. And anywhere you have a window, you have to indicate this is a window. You have to tell it this is a mirror. Otherwise, the camera is going to try and stitch whatever it sees to another part. And, you also got to be careful. For instance, yesterday, I had a house, it was an empty house, and the basement is all gray walls, all gray carpet, nothing on the wall. You know what empty homes look like. Matterport tends to get confused. It doesn't know where it is. So if you don't have points for it to kind of figure out, oh, I'm in this room, so I need to now connect to this one, it can be tricky. Does anybody own a Matterport in this room? Okay, so basically the camera will tell you, you do a scan, and it'll say no alignment, rescan. When you're in a big room like that, you have to be able to figure out how to tell the camera to understand where it is. So once again, knowing that, because if you don't know those sorts
You
of
also
things.
have to hide from it. That was the fun part, was like, put the camera on the stairs and then go hide around the corner so that when it scans, because it does a full 360, like on a tripod, it scans, you can't be in the shot. You've got to go hide in. one of the things Jeff said is sometimes he'll do the review and he'll go like, shoot, I wasn't out of the frame far enough.
Like your shadow, you'll realize the sun coming in and you're standing, because a lot of times we'll walk behind the camera and walk around like this, and you're like, oh, big shadow on the wall. So those are all kind of interesting, fun things that you kind of have to work around.
So how many scans on a typical, say, 2,000 square foot house, how many scans does it take to build one of these tours?
I would say probably like 75 to 80 is pretty normal on a 2,000 square foot house. The 14,000 square foot scan that we did this week, that was 300. I think it was like 298. That was something that took, it was a few hours each day over a period of a couple days. Another thing, your guys' timelines run really tight a lot of times. When a buyer says, when a homeowner says, all right, I'm ready to sell, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and go. And they're like, oh, and by the way, can we get it on the market tomorrow? Matterports, generally, you can do that. They most of the day, because what happens is you have to send them for processing. So once you get done with the scan, you upload it into Matterport's cloud, if you will, and then it processes. Generally, on your 2,000 square foot homes, those are going to come back within 12 hours or so. On a 14,000 square foot home, it can sometimes take up to 48 hours. And it all,
That wasn't a home though, right?
It was a home.
14. Oh my God.
It was a home. It's going to be beautiful. It's still in the stage. It's going to be beautiful. It's definitely a home. Spiral staircase.
Oh,
that's what I was talking about. I love it.
That was like an apartment building.
And once again, because there's ups and downs to everything, because it is a Matterport or whatever other service, Matterport based deal. If something is going on with their system, you are at the mercy of them. We have had a scan take 36 hours before, and it was just a normal home, and that's why we generally tell realtors, expect 2 days. You'll probably have it tomorrow and everything, but expect a couple days, because you are at the mercy of someone else. So it's never fun to be at the mercy of something like that, but you are. Some things get hung up. Sometimes you will upload, and everything you did on your end was great, and it comes back, and you're like, the garage was over here. But those types of things, Matterport support is always really helpful. They will get right on it. They will go in. They will restitch things. One of the other fun things you have to pay attention to when you're scanning, especially those big empty rooms. Just this happened yesterday. I was scanning, and you had to get in the groove, right? And you're marking, you're going around, and all of a sudden I look down, and I'm like, this is not, it was basically putting my room on the wrong side of the basement. And once again, I couldn't figure out where it was. And now, if I had just gone along and kept checking, doing all of these things and getting home and uploading it, we would have had to basically, even after that upload, there's really no way to really fix that. We would have had to gone back and rescan the basement. So these are all things that are just interesting little tweaks.
We toss the mic over there. Good catch.
Thanks. So if you do a Matterport and you do a listing, sell that listing, a year later the owner has to relocate, do you have to pay for another shot, or can that listing just be reactivated on the website host?
I believe it is, well, one, you can reactivate it, but I believe it goes by the same rules as photos. If it's a different,
No.
You can't take
And
someone
let's
else's.
say they want to
Yeah.
relist it with
Okay,
you, so
with
you
you, yeah,
you've already paid for
absolutely.
it. Can it be reactivated, and is there any cost to reactivate that?
no.
Okay, so it's just one-time flat fee.
Once again, it depends on what company you're
Sure.
using, because there are hosting fees that the Matterport user pays Matterport. Some companies pass that on to the client, some do not.
Okay.
It's, because basically you can host a certain number of of properties for, a base price a month, whatever. If you're doing a lot of, scans and, people want properties hosted for a long period of time, some companies will say, okay, we'll host it for a year for free, and then it's $10 a month after that, or something like that. I know we don't do that. I don't think any of the companies around here do that right now, but that's, that is some things that people do.
So here's another scenario, just maybe this will connect, is maybe you're a property manager and you want to create these tours for for, rental properties that you handle.
That's really what I was asking.
That come
Yeah,
back
you
on
can
the
just
market
click it right-
over and over.
I
Yeah,
just
you
wanted
can
to make
just
it relevant
purchase
for our balance
once.
in the room.
Yeah, you can just make it
real, it's
reactive.
okay.
And actually, even if, say you changed, say one of your properties, you added you added an office on in the back over that period of a year, as long as your processor, as long as the person who did the Matterport backed up their iPad on their iCloud, they theoretically, if they do everything the way that they're supposed to do and hold that, they could go in and just take one scan and re-upload it, and all of a sudden you have a brand new.
And it's stitched back together?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Was there a question up here?
Yeah, I was just going back to the floor plans that you showed. So you can create a floor plan on any existing home?
Mm-hmm.
Just to mimic the original floor plans, like it was a new build or something?
Yeah, you just go in, like I said, and that's one of the things where it would take 75 to 80 scans on a 2,000 square foot house. We're looking at 40 scans, you're kind of in and out, because all you're looking for is measurements. You process it, and it just pulls the floor plan.
So when the camera is set up and it does its scan, it's collecting the image, it's scanning the image, but it's also doing measurements, it's locating where that scan is in succession to all of the other scans that are taken, right? So am I on the right track? I'm
Yep.
learning with you guys.
And we've actually done some work for remodelers, because once again, when they get that matter pack, there are XYZ files as well. Now this goes beyond my sphere of that they can put into any CAD program, and they can basically, instead of, like, architects can use it, builders, remodelers, because they can take the existing home from the Matterport, put it into their CAD program, and all of a sudden they have everything they need to be able to move walls, do as-built, all of that. Pretty cool stuff.
One more question. Does the company doing this, going out and doing the photography, do they typically have the property owner sign any disclosure documents or disclaimer documents for legal protection? Because it is so much more intrusive than a traditional still photo photography.
For me, for my company, that would.
For your company
right.
and or the
I would
broker?
feel, I think in the Matterport community, because this is something discussed a lot, that's really something that's between the realtor and the homeowner. So we are just a third party coming and doing the imagery. So that would be something that, between you folks.
Okay.
On the dollhouse views, I know a lot of our listings, they'll have little nooks and crannies like your closets and things. Do those things show up as voids on the dollhouse where it's just empty space, or in order for it to show in a layout, do you actually have to scan the closets and so forth?
There's a closet over there.
Yep, so, because we don't, usually any small closets and things like that, we don't scan.
There's a closet here.
Where?
So here's, this is
There
a
you
closet right here. It's a big closet, so you can see.
Well, I think we did one
Yeah.
scan in there. Let me go downstairs here. Because like the pantry, Jeff can see the pantry.
So if you want the pantry, ask for Jeff.
Yeah, what it'll do, or just let me know. What it'll do on the dollhouse is it, not necessarily like a black void, but it kind of guesses what it is. So it will just do, there you go, something like that. Whereas I think that's the shower, but that's kind of what it would look like. It just, so not a black void, but it just kind of is an empty space. Basements, a lot of times are like that. So you know how you have that one room that's got the HVAC in it and everything? Most of the time, if they're large enough, I will go ahead and scan them unless the realtor specifically says not to, which sometimes that happens. And it will just it will understand that it's a big room, and it will understand that the wall, the outside wall or whatever should be there, and it will just kind of be empty.
Okay.
Can measurements be generated from that view, from that dollhouse view?
Yes, that's another thing
And
that
then
you
you
can.
can put that without actually doing the measurements.
Yes, that's another thing that you can do. There is basically, and I've never used this application before, but it's, easy enough, is you can click a button, basically, when you're editing to say, you show measurements, and you go through and you kind of highlight whatever walls, whatever you want to be measured, and on the dollhouse view, it'll show those.
I got a roofer that he knows he can have a sky view done of any house he's gonna roof. and it'll come back and tell him how many squares it's gonna take.
I was in
And
independent
siding
insurance adjusting before this.
and siding and everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
it figures it all. He don't
So
have to
cool.
get up on roofs anymore.
Mhm. Yep, not Manscaped, I'm trying to think of that's terrible. I was in that industry for years, and I cannot remember the major company that does that, but actually they're based out of here in Indianapolis, that does most of the software, well, at least as a few years ago when I left this, that was nationally known for basically the software for doing that, measuring the roofs. They're based out of here in Indianapolis.
And is any of the aerial photography, the drone photography incorporated in these tours that you do, or are they separate?
They're separate. At this time, there is no way to add stills to a Matterport. You can't add any additional media to a Matterport, which is sometimes why things like your single property websites, virtual tours, which are super inexpensive, I mean, $20, you know what I mean? You can have all of your media housed in one spot. So for a lot of your higher end listings, things like that, all they would have to do is click on a link, and then they could get your aerials, your video, your Matterport all in one spot.
What'd you say was $20?
A single property website. So like like what you would think of as your tour factory or something like that. A lot of times now the lingo is single property website, and they're basically more media sites where you can put everything in, everything that you have for a listing, you can put into that site, and where you would put your normal tour factory link or whatever it is. I keep saying that because I can't think of ones that I don't use, and I don't want to advertise
ones in our market, so that's okay.
Then, you know, you put that into the VLC, and then that's what shows up on your listing.
So another point of conversation that keeps on coming up is, have you guys seen virtual staging on listings? Sometimes it's hard to tell that it's virtually staged. These little stickers that show up look like real furniture. I mean, it's gotten better and better and better. So we had some philosophical discussions about where to draw the line when you're asked to alter photographs, do virtual staging. So walk me through your sort of thoughts and your process there.
So generally, virtual staging, Photoshop, all of that, you can do whatever you want, right? I mean, I'm not saying we do whatever we want, but
the capabilities.
The capabilities, you can do it. You can make a house look however you want to make it look. I can do it in in an hour or two. However, generally, where kind of the ethics come involved in that is if there is something that we could not move while we were in the house doing the imagery, and we could not, take it off a wall or move it, we will not Photoshop that out. Like, I just Photoshopped, so I had a listing where the realtor had painstakingly put the vacuum lines in the carpet. It looked amazing, and then she walked through it and the vacuum lines were gone. I will Photoshop vacuum lines in the carpet, something like that. But if there's a stain on that carpet, that's not really showing the property as is. If they replace the carpet and come back and do a photo, then that's fine. But those are that's kind of where you get into the little ethical. I actually had someone asked me to Photoshop a tree off a house. A tree had fallen on the house and we got there. I did it for them, but basically the only way I released that photo to them was to know that the tree had been taken off the porch roof and it had been repaired. So once I knew that had happened, here's your photo. We don't have to go back out there.
Jeff had said that somebody requested that they Photoshop out like a big stain, a grease stain in the driveway. And he's like, no. It's there. If you can clean it off, we can come take another picture. But if the stain is there, and that really has consistently been our standard as far as the BLC is concerned, is you must provide a true and accurate representation of the property as it exists currently. On a side note, sort of unrelated, but in the same conversation, we had contacted an agent about a property that was listed as a 2-bedroom condo, and someone had shown it and reported that no, this is a 1-bedroom condo. And so we had some back and forth with that agent who said, well, they could build a 2nd bedroom. We're like, well, absolutely they could. Anything is possible, but it needs to be a true and accurate representation of the current state of that property. So when y'all call and ask us questions, that is our bottom line standard is, Yes, they could change that room into an office. Yes, they could remove that wall and make 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom, but we need, it needs to be listed as it currently exists, and I think that
That's
same
kind of the standard.
standard is true on the property.
With virtual staging, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, but I was gonna
So
say with
even
virtual
with like
staging.
wall colors and things like that, when you're doing virtual staging and you're changing wall colors, that's something that the buyer is gonna have to put money into and have to do. So, there's a difference, I feel like, of marketing what a property could look like and what you're putting on the BLC. I keep looking at you because you had such a good example of this, like, if you have, and we talked about this at Tech Talk, if you have one of the new kind of really cool augmented reality apps where you can take a photograph and change it, and this is what it could look like, or let's try this with granite countertops, because those are definitely out there. That's something where if you're at the home with the buyer or the potential buyer, that's something you can talk about. Putting things on the VLC is, correct me if I'm wrong, is a different story.
Well, and one of the conversations we've had internally is, our rules as they exist have been the same by and large for a very long time, and it goes through a process to get a rule changed. And so there is nothing that explicitly prohibits you from doing virtual staging, because when those rules were created, this wasn't even an idea. This has not yet been imagined. So many of the internal conversations we have about virtual staging is, we liken it to if you had a property that was inhabited when you initially go in and take the pictures, and during the period of that listing, the homeowners move and take all of their stuff with you, or with them. You're not stealing their stuff, right? But if they take all of their stuff with them and now it is vacant, are you required to go and take new pictures? Not really. So we've kind of taken the same philosophical idea here of maybe it's an empty house and you want to provide the images of what it would look with stuff in the rooms. It hasn't risen to the top as a problem yet. We haven't heard a lot of objections to it yet, as long as you're not misrepresenting, that this is the size and shape and location of the room.
Or that there's not actually a fireplace. Or that there's stuff like that.
Yeah, if there wasn't a fireplace and you virtually stage it and add a fireplace in, then we're gonna have issues, because you're changing structural conditions of the house.
I was just gonna ask, so you can take a completely empty home and you can go in and stage it virtually, as long as you're not changing the wall colors or anything that's existing about the home, you can do that, right?
Or hiding something. If there was a problem above the fireplace and they put an art there to cover it up, then we're gonna have a problem.
And we have people asked to Photoshop cracks out of walls and things like that, and that's, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And you would be surprised by how many times we're asked to do that kind of stuff. So it's not something that people don't really know. And I'm not saying people are being nefarious. I think it's just not thinking. You know what I mean? And the homeowners are the worst, right? Because usually, a lot of times we're there without the agent and with the homeowner with no agent present, and of course they're going to ask for things like that, and you just have to and if I'm not comfortable answering those questions, I'm sending them to you.
If you stage an empty home, where do you get these pictures, like of furniture and things like that? Is that?
Well, you have a lot of times if you're a photographer, you have basically subscriptions to stock photos and things like that. So you have a subscription, like for instance, we have a subscription to stock music where we can, without royalties, and stock photographs and things like that, to where you can use without royalties.
You just go through and select the furniture items that you want in that virtual tour?
Basically.
And then you can select how big you want it to be depending on the length of the wall?
Well, that's where the Photoshop and things like that? That's where somebody who's really skilled in Photoshop and things like that, because they can scale it to where it needs to be and skew it to the right spot. And as we were talking earlier, she was saying that a lot of times when you virtual stage, things kind of look like they're floating. That's where it takes a really good technician and artiste to be able to make it look like this.
Yeah, because we have, even in the BLC, our eyes are on listings all the time, and we'll come across them sometimes like, hey, come look at this. The couch is floating, it's amazing. So some of those, I'm like, I want to go to that house and see the floating couch. So some of them are done better than others, and it does come down to how good is that technician. Here's your example of sort of thinking bigger. Some of these technical aspects that are coming available it can help with some, maybe commercial applications more than anything. But think about some of the communities that are under heavy development right now in our, new construction areas, new communities going in. This is kind of a neat idea for looking at how to give someone a sense of place and a sense of that community. Do you have
So with the camera I was talking about earlier, the Latte Black camera that will scan outdoors, you can do things like in those pictures. I wish the link doesn't work to this one, or the Matterport user that used it took it down. But basically, this is an entire complex. It has a convention center, hotel. You can walk around the parking lots. You can see basically the entire city block. Where this is kind of cool in the real estate world is, for instance, there's a builder that we work with that has a community right now that, they're really promoting. It's a great community. If we had access to something like a Black, which is, not too far along that these things aren't going to be so cost prohibitive, just by going on their Facebook page, you could walk the streets. So you think about those builders and developers that are doing the really cool walkable communities. You could just go online. You could start at the end, and you could walk your way through and give and give folks who may not necessarily be coming to your community, to your model or whatever. They could do it online, and that actually might make them come to the community to see your model. So really cool stuff. This is so many applications that cities. Like you think of the city of Carmel using something like this, city of Fishers, like downtown. Imagine being able to just go online and walk down Mass Ave and virtual reality. Super cool.
Well, and big corporations considering doing a new headquarters in a particular city, giving them a glimpse into, I wonder where I've heard that recently, giving them a glimpse into, into that area of town. There's so many applications to this, especially for, again, those cities that are doing some development, those areas of our state that are doing some development and hoping to bring new companies in. This could be a really forward-thinking application for that. Come establish your business in Fishers because we're doing all of this, downtown development or what have you.
You can speak to your overseas investors with this rather than, having them fly over.
So let's say I, wanted to contract your company to feature a neighborhood like Woodruff Place and the amenities and things that are coming to it, like where, I want to use, video, and I know you don't have the camera that will allow you to do the outdoors, but would that be something that you guys would have other ways to do?
Absolutely. Actually, the community I was just talking about with the builder that we work with, we put together an entire video of the community with, aerials and aerial video showing the walkability of it, the retail, the green space, coming down, showing the homes. So that is a video we can put together using aerials, stills, cinematic walkthroughs, all of that, and that can kind of show what the entire community has to offer. So we've actually put if you want to chat later, I can give you that example to let you know just kind of an idea of what's out there. But those are, and once again, these things are not as cost prohibitive as you think they are. Like people don't charge that much because one, companies that work with realtors, we know that you guys are working for yourselves as well, and that you guys have a bottom line that you have to deal with. So it's really not as high cost as you think it would. Especially if you're dealing with, you've got multiple listings in the same neighborhood, you think that one investment might, completely change your marketing scheme.
So we've also put together just a few ideas of, practical usage. Again, aside from just thinking of it from realtors as your marketing resources, you talked about insurance documentation.
That's one thing that's really out there right now. People are using Matterport and 3D virtual tours for insurance purposes. So they will have a 3D tour done of their home with all of their belongings in it. And basically have that for posterity's sake, should, an event occur, they can go straight to the insurance company, and, if there's ever a quabble about did they actually have that, XYZ 70-inch flat screen, yes, they did. Here's the, also for complete total losses. On the other side, insurance companies are using it as well, especially for commercial insurance adjusting. It's funny, once again, here to take my old industry with my new one. With insurance adjusting, the actual insurance adjuster company coming in will use a Matterport to document exactly all of the damage in a 3D world. So there is no, because a lot of times things can get, 2D still photos cannot show the whole picture sometimes, especially in large total losses or large commercial losses, that sort of thing. So they're using this on the other side. So you can use it as the insurance carrier as well as the insurance purchaser.
When them pictures are taken, can they be authenticated so that it's absolutely sure that it's not been photoshopped
Well,
later?
since there is no possibility to Photoshop these right now, which is like the virtual tours, so that's something, and once again, I'm not sure how far down litigation things could go, but it's very, it's very upfront that you cannot manipulate these at this time, which and I think that might be part of the reason they're kind of keeping it that way. And if you do want to manipulate them, you got to go
Right.
through offsites
And they're absolutely dated, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We kind of talked a little bit about this earlier, but taking those floor plans and being able to incorporate that as a OBJ file, or pull it into a CAD drawing so that you can look with a renovator and say, okay, what if we move this wall? What if we shift this around? So this is just an example of that.
Think about like your Chip and Joanna games, right?
That's
How they have,
exactly what I was
yeah,
thinking.
how they have,
The wall just
she
shows
has
up
her,
and
yeah.
moves
So
and-
that's something where they would use a different program for that,
Yeah.
but they would have all of the mesh files, all the XYZ, the OBJ, everything they would need to import into that program to be able to utilize it however they use that.
But unless they have a pre-installation scan, they're not going to know that they're going to have to put a new beam in.
Exactly,
across
and where the electricity is.
And then here's my part. Yay! I get to contribute. So we probably a little over a year ago incorporated a new field in the BLC to handle these because they were coming more and more into our marketplace. We had several requests by realtors who said, "Hey, I'm getting these Matterport tours done, and there's no place for it to go in the system, and I'm not sure how it's getting fed out. It's extra work when I have this done to try to make sure it goes where it needs to go." So where we can assist in that manner, then certainly we want to make your job easier. So you'll see when you look up a listing, when there is a Matterport, or we call it an interactive virtual tour. We tried to stay very brand neutral, but it's called an interactive virtual tour. When you put your listing in the system, there is a specified URL line for that. So you just copy the URL that's provided by your professional or that's provided through your hosting site. You copy that URL and you put it in the same place where all of your other virtual tour links are housed on that input form. Yes.
When someone does this, it's very important that they give you all of the links. There's a branded and unbranded and what they call an MLS compliant. So, because all of the rules that you guys have to deal with the BLC, if you put the wrong link in there, you could be not in compliance. So there are 3 links that you get, and once again, I am not as well versed in what my board.
I like her, she's talking compliance. That's awesome.
What my board exactly is compliance, but your unbranded link generally will work unless you have matter tags, because then you can't go to different content. So then you would want it's called MLS compliant, which takes off all external content and all branding. So really quickly there.
Yep, thank you.
What does that look like in the public version?
I'll show you here in a second. So when you look up a listing in the BLC, if it has one of these interactive tours linked in the input form, then you'll see this little icon underneath the picture with all of your others. You can click on, I pulled it out so it's a little bit bigger. I think it looks like, remember when cameras had film and you got the negatives? This is like a blue negative. Eventually, CoreLogic will update into the 20th century with their icons, but for now. They're kind of the old-fashioned, like 50s version icons. So you're going to click on that, and that's what will link you out to that Matterport tour. On the client side, when you send listings, I just pulled a screenshot of a client portal. So when you send listings to a client and they view that listing in their client portal, which is the link that they follow when you email them something, it'll pop up in that environment and it'll have the little icon all spelled out. It looks like the house with the wraparound tour, and it says interactive tour. So on the client side, when they click through that, that takes them to the link so they can interact with that. So that's how we tried to make the distinction. Your normal virtual tours that are that slideshow style tour are still just called virtual tours. But if it's a Matterport or similar hosted virtual tour that you can interact with, that you can click on and advance your way through the property, then it gets its own little icon, its own little designation. And that flows right through. And then that field is also provided in our external feed if you're using the BLC to feed to any of the third-party aggregators that we have available, Realtor.com, Homes.com, the Zillow group, which includes Zillow and Trulia, and then on MyBoard.com it'll show up as well. So that's how we've tried to kind of bridge that gap, understand the technology, and make sure that you have a venue, a vehicle to deliver it to your clients. I didn't talk very much today at all. I did it all right. Any final questions?
You may have answered this earlier because I was late and I apologize for being tardy, but how long does it take you to typically do the scan, say 2,000 square foot?
No one asked that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
good question. And that was actually something we want to talk about.
Yeah.
So like your normal 2,000 square foot house, I would give about an hour to an hour and a half. Obviously, they go up from there. Furnished homes take longer than unfurnished homes because you're dealing around, furniture and things like that. But generally, I schedule, if it's a 2,000 square foot home, I'm going to schedule an hour, 30, hour and 45 minutes for it. It probably won't take me that long. But once again, it goes up from there. If you're having somebody that comes, like yesterday, I did stills and a Matterport together. I mean, that was about 3 hours at the property, and it was a sizable place. But so, it's not an all-day thing unless it's a 14,000 square foot.
But you also take into consideration as a photographer, if she's doing external shots, then she's, going to mind the weather and the time of day that's going to be optimal for getting those outside shots.
And that's usually why we'll ask you if the homeowner's going to be there, or if like the realtor's going to be there, because generally it does take longer just what it is. So we'll schedule time. We schedule time based on all of those factors.
And when I coordinated with her to tag along on her shoot, she was like, yeah, just make sure you park way down the block so we can shoot around and not get your car, that kind of stuff. She's seen my car, so she didn't want it in the shot.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Do you take stills from the 3D tour, or do you do those separately, and is there a difference in the look and quality?
Yes. The answer is yes, you can. The answer is some people do. The answer is no, I don't. Because I do feel like there's a quality difference. If you're hiring a professional photographer, I would like to have the quality of those still photos be as absolutely best as they can. And a mirrorless DSLR is going to be much better than what you pull from Matterport. If you want to, you can. They're not terrible, but here's iPhone photos, here's your DSLR photos. Your Matterport photos are going to be kind of right there. So, in my opinion, if you're paying someone to be on the property, you better get the best you can get.
So I'm a new agent, and speaking with Matterport, can you talk about your pricing? Do you have a la carte pricing? Is it a subscription based? I mean, how does your specific
What we pay
Yeah.
to Matterport?
Yeah.
Basically you pay a monthly hosting fee, and it's depending on how much you pay is how many spaces that you can host. So if you're someone who doesn't do a lot of 3D virtual tours and you only have 15, then you pay a lower price per month. But then if you have large homes, anything over 100 scans is charged additional because it's looked at as
It's a higher file size.
Higher file size, larger property. So you get charged like that as well. But so you have a monthly fee, and then if you exceed how many properties that you're hosting at a time, then you pay additional monthly fee. Like I said, over the across the world because I'm in the Matterport community, so there's a lot of ideas exchanged. A lot of companies do pass that on. I don't know of any companies here in our market that actually pass that cost on. So it's just something that it
It's just
think as a
something
cost of
absorb as a
business.
cost of
Mhm.
business, yeah. So it sounds like there's lots of people who want to talk to Susie about what she and her company provide, and I'm sure she's prepared to do that. But from an education standpoint, are there any other questions that we can answer before we wrap up? Because we're right at 11.
I have one.
Sure.
Are you able to monitor, like when you set the camera up and you say you have to go around the corner or something, on your iPad or whatever, or is there any way you can monitor what the camera is actually looking at, what it's taking pictures of at the same time?
As soon as the 360 is done, so
Oh,
as soon as the
it
camera
has to
does
be
it,
done, okay.
then you wait a couple minutes and it aligns, and then you can preview your scan. So then I can look and see exactly what it saw. So I can see if that cat was running through the room, or if, you know, my husband's big head was sticking out of a
Or if the
hallway.
homeowner peeked around the corner
Yeah.
because they wanted to see what was going on, and he was talking about that too.
Yeah, I just
That'd be
wondered-
me.
yeah, I was just wondering if there was any way for you to monitor it so
So you can do it
stop
on
it
site.
and-
Yeah, and you can, and if you see someone walk in the room, you can actually stop it in the middle
Okay.
of what it's doing, and you can restart it.
So you monitor that per scan or at the end of the whole deal?
Depends on how busy the house is that you're scanning. If you've got 3 kids and 2 dogs running around the house, which happens, even though I know you guys try and make that not happen, then yes, you're pretty much monitoring per scan, making sure that folks aren't in there.
Okay.
Ideally, you don't have to do that. Ideally, you know,
It's an empty house, you just walk through, you do your thing.
Right.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us
you
again. I
very
hope this
much.
was fun.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Coffee service is still open?
Do you have a card?
I do.
Does she have a card? Great question.
Let me get that.